Washington Wizards are getting ready for the playoffs. After a 2-8 start this season, Washington has turned things around and clinched a playoff berth. The Wizards are looking for their first 50-win season in 38 years. Fans are excited for the playoff games to start.
Well, obviously we want to see them at least make it to the Eastern Conference Championship, and hopefully they can, beat Cleveland or Boston in the Eastern Conference Championship, and then take it and represent the East Coast and beat either Golden State or San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference.
Washington has won the Southeast Division for the first time since 1979 and are currently seated 4th in the Eastern Conference.
We are now joined by Wizards writer Bryna Kramer, who covers Wizards for Wizards Extra. Bryna, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Great. I'm so happy you were able to join us here. And so you've probably followed the Wizards team for a while now. What is the biggest improvement you've seen so far since you first started watching them to how they are now?
Well, the biggest improvement they've made since the beginning of the season is definitely finding the right team chemistry and players knowing their role. They overhauled most of their roster this season. They only came with 6 players from last season. So it took a little while for them to find the groove and find the role that each player needed to learn. So I think finally around December and January when they really took off, that was the biggest thing that had changed. They finally gelled together the way they were supposed to.
Yeah, and speaking of all those players, what players have really stuck out to you so far this season?
Jason Smith has really stuck out to me. I mean, for the first 20 games or so, he kind of looked like the worst player on the team, and maybe even in the NBA. I mean, he was not doing so well. But since then, he's really started to rebound better. He's played a lot better defense. He's made his mid-range jumpers, which is what he signed his contract for. That's what he was brought in. He's improved his three-point shot. He's the best player off the bench. He has so much energy, and Coach Brooks knows that even if he doesn't play a game, that he can count on him if he's needed. So Jason Smith really impressed me this year.
Did you write an entire article on him? Because I feel like you know so much.
I have. I've written a lot about Jason Smith. I've spent a lot of time around this team, so he's really impressed me this season.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to ask you about, so the Wizards are tied with Toronto right now for a 3rd seed in the East. They both have a 48-31 record. So in your opinion, do you think the Wizards should kind of take it easy in these last 2 games this season, or should they really fight for that 3rd seed?
I think they really have to fight for that 3rd seed. I mean, right now, Cleveland has the number 1 seed, and it looks like they're going to keep the 1 seed. And you really don't want to see Cleveland in the 2nd round, which would be the matchup if the Wizards stay at 4. So, because you don't really know what LeBron's capable of. I mean, you can't count him out forever.
A king.
Yeah, right. So if you can stay at the 3rd seed, then you wouldn't face them until the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think getting the 3rd seed is really important.
So talking about Wizards going that far, what do you think the key is for the team, or any key players that really need to step up so that this team can make a long and deep playoff run?
Well, the biggest problem they've had since the All-Star break is their defense. I mean, it's really bad. That's all. I mean, it's lacked a lot. And it's not just one player. All the players, for the most part, have really denigrated in terms of their defense. And so if they don't pick up their defense, which is something they're capable of doing, they have all the right personnel. It's just, if they don't pick it up, they're not going to go that far, especially once you get into the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference as well into a deep playoff run.
So tell me a little bit about your role with Wizards Extra and how you got started writing for them, and like what made you so interested in starting to cover the Wizards.
So I've always loved basketball. It's my favorite sport, especially the NBA. It's just what I've found fascinating, which is weird growing up in the middle of college hoops. I grew up not that far from UNC, Duke, UVA, Virginia Tech, all those places. But I just had a friend who writes for them reach out to me and ask me if I wanted to join because they were getting ready to start a rebranding earlier last spring. And so I just, from my role here, I'm the closest one that lives to the Verizon Center, so it was easier for me to go and be a beat reporter and be on the scene for most of the games this year.
So as such a basketball fan, has it been hard for you now being in that reporter, writer role to be unbiased?
It has. I mean, I think it helps because our blog is definitely something more geared towards the fans. We're not going for the breaking news all the time. We're trying to do pieces that fans want to read about and cover topics that they want to care about, and that's been really fun getting to be around in the locker room and be around these guys to kind of give the fans what they want and maybe not necessarily what the Post is going to go for or CSN.
Awesome. Well, Bryna, thank you so much for joining us today. We got a lot of insight on the playoffs coming up, so thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
New studies show a surprising trend in sports-related concussions. District Wire News' Audrey Gelperin has more.
For college athletes, a concussion can have career-ending implications. While many assume contact sports such as football would be responsible for the majority of these, it's actually women's soccer players that take the lead. A study conducted by the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons shows that women's soccer has the highest percentage of concussions out of total injuries in a sport. The recovery from a concussion can be tedious. Most athletes feel a pressure to return to their sport or resume their daily activities before they're fully back to normal.
Being in college, I missed 2 weeks, and then after that I was kind of forced to just get right back into it.
At American University, there's a return to play program in place to help athletes recover from traumatic brain injuries.
Depending on who you are, what sport you play, your history, those steps can vary. Some people can go through the process and they're done in 7 days. Others, it takes months to get them back onto the field.
Studies show that the chance of sustaining a concussion is lower for male athletes than female ones. This is due to women's neck muscles not being as developed as men's, thus making it harder for them to bounce back from the impact. Aubrey Gelperin, District Wire News, Washington.
Some college athletes are voicing their concerns that the NCAA is unfairly profiting from their success. Should student athletes be compensated more for their work? District Wire Sports has more after this break.